welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something a little different, a really focused deep dive for grand mentors working here in Scotland.
That's right. Our goal is to give you the essential context about unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, or UASCs, as they're often called.
Right, the idea is if you have this background, you can focus completely on what you do best.
Exactly. The emotional and practical support, being that listening ear, helping with English, showing someone around their new community. You don't need to be an immigration expert.
But understanding the system they're in, the pressures they're under, that lets you be a much better buffer against all of it. So let's start with the basics. Who are we talking about when we say UASC?
We're talking about young people who arrive, often in Glasgow, completely alone to seek asylum. The sources we've looked at say they're generally between 16 and 20 years old when they get here.
And they're coming from all over the world, aren't they? The list of countries is, well, it's a map of global crises.
It is. Afghanistan, Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Iran, Iraq, Vietnam, China, places across West Africa. It really reflects where people are facing desperate situations.
And that desperation, that's the starting point. They're not just moving, they're fleeing.
They are fleeing things like civil war, being forced into an army, being put in prison, or worse, facing a death penalty, maybe for their beliefs.
And increasingly, we're seeing young people who've been trafficked, who have been terribly exploited.
Absolutely. So when we talk about their journey to the UK, it's crucial to understand it's not just a trip. The research calls it fraught with danger and uncertainty.
It's an ordeal.
A profound ordeal. When they arrive here, they're not just tired, they are survivors. And that experience shapes everything that comes next.
Okay, so they've survived this immense journey. Let's unpack what they carry with them, this huge weight of trauma and just dislocation.
It's so important to see it as layers of loss. It's not just one thing. They've lost family, friends, their home, their culture, even the future they thought they'd have.
And the research backs this up with some pretty stark numbers, doesn't it?
It does. There's a very clear link between these stresses and serious psychological distress, like PTSD and depression. One statistic that really stands out from the sources is that about a third, 1 in 3 young Afghan men who arrive without parents may have symptoms of PTSD.
1 in 3.
Yeah.
So trauma isn't the exception. It's the baseline we should expect.
It really is. And that trauma isn't just a memory. It actively gets in the way of them navigating the system here.
How does that actually show up, say, in an interview with a social worker?
Well, trauma can really mess with memory. It can make it almost impossible to tell your story in a neat chronological order. Or they might be dissociating, sort of numbing themselves to avoid the pain.
Which could come across as them being distant or maybe even uncooperative.
Exactly. And then you add in their past experiences. If police or officials in their country were a source of danger, their instinct here is going to be fear and mistrust.
So even a well-meaning professional, so social worker or police officer, could be seen as a threat.
Instantly. And that's a key thing for a grand mentor to grasp. You're entering a world where mistrust has been a survival skill.
And that's before we even get to the issue of trafficking.
Right. A young person might have been forced to learn a completely false story, maybe with threats made against their family back home. Traffickers use all sorts of control.
So it's incredibly difficult for them to just tell the truth, even when they're finally safe.
Which is why the #1 priority is establishing safety. Not just physical, but psychological safety. There's a quote from a young person in the source material that just says it all.
What's that?
They said, "The most important thing is to know I am safe."
And that is exactly where a grand mentor comes in. You're outside that official system. You can offer that non-judgmental, compassionate space that starts to build that feeling of safety. So on top of that immense psychological weight, they then have to face a whole load of practical barriers.
A huge number. I mean, the most obvious one is language. Many arrive with very little or no English at all, and often can't read or write in English either.
And there are cultural differences in just how we communicate, right? Nonverbal cues, things like that.
Yes, that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings. And then there's what you could call interview fatigue.
We touched on that. Being asked to tell the worst story of your life over and over again.
To the Home Office, the police, a solicitor, social work. And they might not understand the different roles these people have. A social worker is there for their welfare, an immigration officer for a legal assessment. To a scared young person, they can all feel the same.
That's why trust has to be earned. It's not a given.
It has to be earned, absolutely. And the sources give us clues on how to do that. One young person was quoted saying, "Take time to build trust. Negative body language makes you feel uncomfortable."
Simple things then. Not crossing your arms, not looking at your phone,
Yeah.
being present.
Precisely. Your whole demeanor should say, "I have time for you." It's the opposite of the rushed official interviews they might have experienced.
Which makes the simple, practical things you do as a grand mentor so powerful. Meeting for a coffee, helping them figure out the bus route.
It connects directly to their formal learning. Many of these young people are in what are called 16-plus ESOL classes, English for speakers of other languages.
Old classes aren't just about grammar, are they?
No, not at all. The curriculum is designed around their new life. You'll see modules called things like My New Home or Celebrations to learn about Scottish culture or relationships.
So when you're just having a chat about, say, bonfire night, you're literally helping them with their homework. You're providing the real-world context.
You're helping them apply what they're learning in a classroom. It breaks down the isolation and helps them build the skills they need to make a new life here.
Okay, we have to talk about age assessments.
Mhm.
Now, this is something a grand mentor should never get involved in legally, but understanding it is so important.
It's vital context. The sources call the process controversial and complex, and for good reason.
Why is it so critical?
Because, simply put, their age determines their rights. The support system for a child is completely different and much more protective than the system for an adult.
And it's the local authority, the council, that has to make that call in Scotland.
That's right. And what's really important to know is that the Scottish approach is meant to be a holistic social model.
What does that mean in practice?
It means it's not just about how someone looks or some unreliable medical test. The assessment has to look at the whole person, their background, how they interact, their maturity. It's not just a physical check.
And there are legal standards it has to meet, this Merton-compliant idea.
Yes, that comes from a key legal case. It basically means the process has to be fair and thorough. But the most important principle, the real safety net here, is the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, what is that?
It means if there is any uncertainty about their age, for the purposes of support, they have to be treated as a child until the assessment is complete.
So they get access to all the support for children while the process is ongoing.
Exactly. It's a hugely protective principle. But even with that, we can't underestimate how stressful the process is.
I can only imagine. Your very identity is being questioned.
It's incredibly re-traumatizing. Any inconsistencies in their story, which we know can be a symptom of trauma, get scrutinized. It puts them under immense pressure.
So for a grand mentor, your role isn't to fix the assessment.
No, your role is to be the one person in their life whose acceptance isn't conditional on that assessment. You are the anchor for their identity outside of that stressful process.
So let's look at what happens next. The transition to adulthood at 18. This can be a real cliff edge for any young person in care, let alone a UASC with no family support.
It can, but this is where the Scottish system offers some really significant protections. First, you have to understand the split in powers.
Right, devolved versus reserved.
So, immigration and asylum, that's a reserved matter, handled by the UK Parliament. But health, social services, housing, those are all devolved to the Scottish Parliament.
And that allows Scotland to create its own, more supportive system for care leavers,
A much more robust system, and the cornerstone of that is something called continuing care.
or CC. What is it?
It was brought in by law in 2014 to stop that cliff edge at 18. If a young person was in foster care, kinship care, or a residential home, they have the right to stay in that exact same placement.
The same placement.
Yes, with the same level of support right up until they turn 21.
That's huge. It's about maintaining those stable relationships they've built.
That's the whole point. And alongside that, there's another duty called aftercare, or AC. This applies to all care leavers.
Okay, and how does aftercare work?
The local council has a duty to provide aftercare support up to age 19, and young people can ask for that support right up until they're 26 if they need it.
And what does support mean here? Is it just money?
No, it's completely tailored to their needs. The definition of independent living in Scotland isn't just about having your own flat. It's about having freedom, choice, dignity, and control.
So aftercare could be anything from help with housing and money to support with education or just learning life skills.
All of the above. It's a comprehensive safety net designed to help them succeed at their own pace. It gives the relationships you build as a grand mentor the time they need to really take root and flourish.
So after covering all of that, the trauma, the bureaucracy, the specific Scottish systems. What does it all mean for a grand mentor? What's the main takeaway?
I think the main takeaway is that your power comes from the fact that you are not part of that formal system.
You're not the social worker, not the immigration lawyer.
Exactly. You don't have to manage any of that. Your role is to buffer the effects of it all. You are there to provide the consistency and the trust that the system, by its very nature, struggles to offer.
You're essentially building a counter-narrative to all the fear and mistrust they've experienced. You're demonstrating trust and helping them feel empowered.
You are. And, all that procedural scaffolding we talked about, age assessments, continuing care, it's absolutely vital. It provides physical safety.
But it's not enough on its own.
No. The ultimate success for that young person, their ability to really heal and build a future, that depends on the personal scaffolding. It depends on trusted relationships. The sources are clear. These children arrive without anyone to buffer the effects of overwhelming stress.
And that's the grand mentor, the buffer.
You are that critical protective factor. Think about it. They're navigating this unbelievably complex legal labyrinth, and you get to be the one person who walks beside them, reminding them they're not doing it all alone.